Good evening, everybody. Thank you all for coming tonight. This is one topic and one topic only is about the millage. Looking at the roll, we're all present with the exception of Miss Malcolm, who I think has just turned into the parking lot, so she'll be joining us momentarily. So we do have a quorum. And from the very beginning, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Probst to discuss.
Thank you, Mayor. Really, this is a meeting that will not require any action of any kind. We're just trying to kind of take the temperature as staff and kind of get your direction as to how we're going to go so that we can proceed with the proper advertisements should we have to go down that road of potentially increasing the millage rates. So we just want to make sure we do everything by the book, and no sense in putting out advertisements and creating any calls for alarm or whatnot if we're not going to go down that road potentially. So that's what this meeting's about. And for Beth Thompson to explain our recently received consolidation of the digest and comparisons from the prior years on our tax rates, and so you can get a little bit better understanding of kind of where we are to date and where we've come from and what some of the major changes are ahead of us for the next year. With that, I'll turn it over to Ms. Thompson.
Mr. Probst. I put in front of all of y'all this spreadsheet is kind of color-coded, but it kind of helps follow along when you're trying to see where the numbers are coming from. At the very top, you'll see from 2016 to 2019 comparative of the consolidation of the tax digest that we received from the county. The one highlighted in green, of course, is for 2019. Some big variances that I'll point out. You'll see halfway down under the variance column, a $12 million decrease. That is in the commercial line item. That is primarily due to Piedmont Hospital, what used to be Clearview Hospital. When they were Clearview, they were taxed. Now, when they are under Piedmont, they are a nonprofit status. Therefore, they are not taxed. So that hit our digest really hard. Going down, you'll see another big decrease is $800,000 thereabout on a motor vehicle. That is due to the new title laws, which now is under TAVT. Some of you know if you buy a vehicle now, you don't pay the ad valorem every year when you renew your tag. You pay it up front, and it's a one-time fee, and it goes to the state. The state then divvies it out to counties and cities as they have on their calculation. We have no way of knowing that, so we just kind of at their mercy with what they send us. And if you'll see down below that, the TAVT collections towards the bottom under that blue highlighted, you'll see that it kind of is starting to increase a little bit, but we're nowhere near recouping where we were. If you'll look back in 2016 under motor vehicle on that first line item at top, that collection was at $8 million, and we're now down to $3 million, almost, 3.8 million. So we're not recouping that under the TAVT collections at $350,000 a year. So those are the two big items that are hitting us the worst in our digest for 2019. The total digest is $422,000. It's only a $3.5 million increase, which is less than 1% increase from last year. The next color-coded section, you'll see the revenue comparisons. What I've done is some analysis of the rollback rate. The rollback rate would be at 7.148 mils, and I'll just go down on that line item so we can see the comparisons of all those. The tax generated at the rollback rate would be at $3 million. Our collection rate right now with the county collecting for us is at about a 96% collection rate, which is really good. So that would be at almost 9 million collection. The 2019 budget is at 2.949789 million. You'll see over there in the pink. Based on our budget versus the collection rate of 96%, if we did the full rollback, it would be a decrease of almost $54,000 in collections based on what our budget is. So we would be at a deficit. The tax generated versus the prior year, we're at almost $29,000 less. And the collection versus the prior year, we're at almost $28,000 less. So that, you can kind of see what those line items mean compared to the different millage rates. The next one is, of course, if we kept the same millage rate that we're at now, which is 7.277 mills. Now, keep in mind, if we keep the same that we have now at 7.277, we're going to have to advertise as an increase because we're not doing the rollback. So anything other than option A we would have to do an advertisement as a notice as an increase. So as you'll see, the main line item on that is the bottom orange one. If you'll see, if we did that, the same millage rate of 7.277, we'd only see a $24,000 increase over the prior year. And you can see each of those options. That effect on the taxpayer is the next section below that, and that's based on each of those millage rates of what the effect of the taxpayer at a $60,000, or that's taxable rate, at a $150,000 property up to a $250,000 property, at the 40% tax rate, what their city tax bill, the effect of it would be at that millage rate. While y'all are kind of digesting that, I'll kind of point out a couple things that our revenues under the general fund are almost right where we had budgeted. I mean, we couldn't have done any better. Right now, with an estimate, because of course, property taxes haven't started coming in yet, so we're at a 0% collection right now at mid-year. And that is what this sheet is. If I did an estimate of a half a year of collections, which would be at 1.4 million, which is 50%, that would get us we would be at a 51.2% collection of our revenue versus what we budgeted. So our revenue for the general fund is right where we budgeted for mid-year. So we're not collecting any more, we're not collecting a whole lot less, so we're right where we need to be. And now that is based on what the current year budget is. We do have the SAFER grant that will be coming off next year. Will be the first year that we'll actually see a decrease in what the grant that we'll be getting from FEMA. The estimated expenses for that are about $250,000 to $280,000, about $280,000 a year for those 6 employees and benefits. In 2020, we'll be getting our last little bit from FEMA on that grant, which will be about $100,000. So you're looking at about $140,000 that we'll have to, $140,000 to $150,000, depending on where that falls, of what we're going to have that added expense that we're going to have for next year that we didn't have this year. I'll open it up for discussion.
Thank you. Are there any questions for Ms. Thompson?
The bond rate stays the same every year?
Well, no, that varies based on your value of your digest and what your payments will be. So for this year, it was 1.981 mils, totaling $881,888 in the debt payment. That's going to roll off for 2020, okay? But remember, actions taken over the past couple years, we've got a little bit that's probably going to absorb some of this as well. So we have the Walton Plaza purchase payment from a couple years ago. That'll be $117,483. We've got the Walton Plaza Police Department bond. That'll be $187,260. The SAFER grant that Beth mentioned will eat into some of that. And then reimbursement of utility funds for some of the downtown green property acquisition. So that'll probably be just under $300,000 there. So all of that combined is going to eat into the 881, 888 a little bit. Nevertheless, you can,
Yeah,
it's coming off, yeah.
that's coming off of the overall millage.
It's coming off
rate.
no matter what. I'm just saying we have to absorb all of that into,
Because the millage rate that's used for O&M is only, what, after rollback is only 5.298.
right.
and it has the additional 1.979 or something added to it,
Yeah.
makes our 7.277. So looking at a tax bill, you will not see the 1.979.
Yeah, I mean, we could leave it we could leave that tucked in there and it just shifts to M and O. And everything washes and stays the same, if that makes sense.
It covers some of those
It covers
extra
all that
expenses
stuff.
that you're talking about.
Correct. It just doesn't give you anything else. I'm just putting this out here. It doesn't give you anything else for additional police, additional fire, parks. It doesn't give you any of that. So general fund activities are pretty much about at their limits. Property maintenance, marshals, we've kind of been holding back on hiring those, just to try to keep the budget level. You know, like Beth said, we're 51% revenues, and we're about at, what, 49% expenditures now?
Yeah.
So, and that's sandbagging a couple of positions for right now, just to maintain that equilibrium. So, as far as new initiatives for 2020, if we keep everything the same, there's not a lot of room for really new initiatives going forward.
Well, not only is it new initiatives, but we want to give some of our team raises. I mean, are we coming out of different pockets, but we got some great folks who work here. I'm sorry, you're not going to get a raise this year. And if somebody's going to tell me that my tax bill would increase $10 a month, I think that's palatable.
Well, of course, the hardest thing to do this is, you're talking about money we're gonna spend in 2020, but we haven't done a budget yet. So we don't know. We're trying to adopt a tax rate for 2019 to spend in 2020, and we don't have a 2020 budget. Sort of doing it, I mean, I know we have to because of the way the year falls, but we're actually doing it backwards.
In some regards, yeah, but in other ways, it makes it a little easier because you know the money we're gonna work with for the budget. So this is the bulk of our general fund budget. So if whatever you guys set in a few weeks, that's what we're gonna have to live with the budget. So there's no guessing about what it's gonna be.
I understand that, but I go back to what you just saying, it's like, if we think we need to spend an extra $100,000 on something in 2020 or whatever it is.
It'll
that
take
needs to
some.
be figured into this.
Well, it could take some restructuring of priorities within the budget. It might be changing program activities of some sort. Don't know what that is yet. But if you told me to find $100,000, I would have to, cut something else.
And a note on that is when we worked on operating budgets last year, when department heads came to us initially, we had to have that conversation with them. We had to cut their budgets, every one of them, because the revenues just weren't there. And like Larry said, we are on the front end of it, so we're basing this on the 2020 budget. We don't know what the expenses are. This is assuming our expenses stay the same as they are now. If we do the rollback, they would have to stay exactly the same or less. If anyone goes over budget, we would have to cut that because this revenue is going to be based on the same exact thing that we have now if we do the rollback. If we don't have funds coming from anywhere else.
The biggest hit was obviously the hospital when it became a nonprofit status. That's a lot of money that evaporated from the digest.
Without me doing a calculation, how much does that actually mean in dollars to us?
8%. That was going to be probably almost $1 million, yeah.
About $1 million.
Mm-hmm.
David?
Well, I look at this and obviously taking that huge amount out for the hospital puts us in a very precarious situation. And I just got to tell you, my thought is, and I think I made the motion last year to go to the rollback rate, but I think on this one, I just think that would be irresponsible to do a rollback. And my thought is that we either go with option B or option C. And when you look at the actual effect on an average tax bill, you're not talking $10 a month. You're talking, depending on the value of the property, somewhere between $10 and $30 for a whole year. So you're talking 50 cents to, $2 or $3 a month. So that isn't a huge amount. And my perspective is you don't endanger our budgeting process by trying to go to a rollback when you've taken almost a $13 million hit on your digest when the hospital rolled out. And that's just something that I don't think the general public yet comprehends exactly what happened when that hospital went nonprofit.
But the one thing that hospital does, it has gone from lax and poor performing to 180-degree turn. It's actually bringing patients from elsewhere to be serviced, which is increasing property values
Well, I get
in our
that,
town. So I know, I want them to know that too. That's,
but
we're lucky to have them here.
that's a whopping hit to take in 1 year on your tax
I'm
day.
gonna agree with a lot of what Dave said, except I'm not even sure it's option B or C. I have voted every year I've been on the council for a decrease in millage rate since we've done it every time we won. And, lost that first vote. This time, I think we're gonna have to go up, and I'm not even sure B and C's enough. I think we've got some initiatives we need to do this year. I wish we had an opportunity to discuss budget prior to adopting this. I know we don't, I mean, that's just a luxury we don't have. But I'm just concerned that I think we've got some major initiatives we need to spend money on next year.
And those would be improving our parks,
And police officers to the
We're gonna
And
have to have
poli-
officers.
police officers.
We've talked about that for the last 3 years, and we haven't done it right now.
Street patrol officers,
Right.
increasing that number. That needs to be
Officers on the streets, yeah.
front and foremost.
And I just think we've got some things like that that we're gonna really need to spend money on, and I'm not sure how much that money's gonna be, and I don't know where it fits in, but I definitely don't think we need to do rollback. I think we need to do an increase of some sort, as much as I hate to see it go up.
Logan or Beth, with all the new residential properties being built and commercial properties, do we have any estimation to what those will do over the calendar year of 2020 to the revenue?
So there's a lag to when those show up.
2021?
Yeah, so what you're seeing hit the ground now won't be assessed until January 1st, right? Or it can be assessed, but it won't hit the next year's digest until January 1st, if completed and CO'd and all that.
It won't hit next year's digest, these houses this year won't hit next year's digest until,
They may, it depends when they get their CO. So sometimes you can run an almost 2-year lag based on when something is built and on the ground, and by the time it actually gets picked up and taxed by the assessors and the tax commissioner. So we did show a 9.44% increase in the residential on the tax digest. That's pretty big. That's the biggest we've seen in many years here. But unfortunately, it was completely wiped out by
The 12 million.
that plus, the motor vehicle and so on and so forth. So any good gains we've had with new commercial, residential was completely wiped out for this year. Now, going forward, yeah, we'll probably continue to see that clip along at 10, maybe even 15%, the way things are going this year. But what does that translate to in real dollars? I said $1 million roughly earlier. I think that was everything combined. So really just the hospital, is couple $100,000 probably in lost value, just looking at it by itself. TAVT's not really helping us. That's just the reality we're operating in. We put all this together, just for your own awareness. Like I said, no decisions have to be made, but we just have to make the advertisements in the proper legal fashion. If it's something that could even be considered, we still have to put it out there. You guys can always change your mind in a few weeks, but we're just operating by the state law, Taxpayer Bill of Rights, and the timing of the tax commissioner's office right now.
And the millage rate would have to be adopted at the regular council meeting in August, because I have to have it to dairy by August 14th.
So on the debt service, you said it's roughly 1.9 mils.
1.981 mils this past year.
So when that runs up or comes to term, that 1.9 will still be part of the millage
So,
rate?
yeah,
It'll just roll to general fund?
the good thing is it'll turn into what's called the maintenance and operations millage rate, the M&O. So that's a good thing. After 20 years, that's finally being paid off. We roll that back into the M&O rate, and our taxpayers won't see the effects of it at all. So if you left everything constant, that bond debt of $881,000 is gone. So that's, like Mr. Little was talking about, that's the nice thing of having this.
So that's 800,000.
That's $800,000
But
that we
we've got,
have.
say, 300,000 in debt service from the
Correct.
new police department and all that.
Yeah, so you add it all up, that's about $450,000.
So we'll be looking at $350,000 increase to the tax generated
That's correct.
if we don't change anything.
That's correct. So that's our
another
little
big-
lucky windfall, so to speak, if everything is held constant.
Now, in order,
7.2.
277.
if we were to extend or renew that bond, is there a way to do it at a lower total amount?
Now, we'd have to go through the entire process to issue a new bond.
It was done in 2016.
Yeah. Yeah, that one, we refinanced it. The 2000 general obligation bond, we refinanced it in December of 2016. I'd save a good bit of interest on it for its last 3 years, along with combined utility bonds. So we kind of did it all in one big package.
Do we know what the total was on that in 2000,
Oh,
roughly?
I think it was about $20 million.
It was a lot. I looked today and I can't remember.
Yeah.
But our last payment is this year, which is the $881,000. So it'll be paid off. And assuming, assume that was paid off last year. This year, we could go with the 7.277 mill rate, which we wouldn't, would be in effect of what the rollback would be. So we wouldn't have to advertise as an increase. So assuming we're at next year, but this was last year, and that debt was paid off last year, that 1.98 would roll into the M&O, like Logan said, and we would stay at the same rate that we are at 7.277. Would essentially be our quote-unquote rollback.
Gotcha.
So what best got to do for advertising, if we think we wanted to go with option C, the advertisement would show a proposed 4.85% increase in millage rate. Is that-
If you say, hey, that's our max for consideration on down the road in a couple of weeks, yeah, it would say that.
So you estimated up to a $250,000 property. What are our percentages of properties in Monroe that rank 250 and under?
I don't know that number, but what was the, we were talking about that earlier, the average home price? I don't have a,
150 something.
yeah, it was I think it's
Yeah.
something, 50 something. The county was like 263, and we were far below that, about $80,000 or $90,000 below that. But I don't, and that's just residential, so I
Right.
don't have the total breakdown of what's above and below 250.
The same millage rate applies to residential and commercial, correct?
Correct.
Well, I think too, Larry, what you were talking about is important to identify some bigger projects we want to do as we make this decision, regardless of having a budget set. Because we'll need to have some kind of,
Justification.
yeah, some kind of reason and, for that future action. For instance, like the park system, I mean, I would love to, if we could drop that bond to the $4 or $5 million mark, I would love to next year start renovating all the parks at one time and get them up to speed in the next year, maybe two.
Of course, you also understand that we'll set this millage rate again a year from now, which will be 2020 revenue. Because what we're talking about now is 2019 revenue,
It'll hit at the end of 2019
right? I mean,
to help us fund most of 2020, correct?
but it's 2019 revenue, and so if we need to spend more in the budget, if we borrowed money from another fund to get paid back next year when taxes come in.
Yeah, so there's time to make adjustments,
Yeah.
for sure, exactly like you're saying.
But I agree with you, to list a few priorities that we really need to face, to see, if you're running, redoing all the parks at once, you're looking at $4 million. If you're bringing in 4 police officers, you're looking at $225?
Plus vehicles.
It's about $110,000 per, if you include salaries, vehicles,
Car.
equipment. Yeah,
But you can't use bond funds to pay salary positions, can you?
correct.
Right. But
I'm thinking that was for my benefit.
Just looking at all this money we're gonna, that we need, and at MEAG last week, I talked to a number of folks from similar-sized cities, Covington, Alpharetta, which, of course, has a different price point, but our police force is under 40, and the next one is 80, and of course, Alpharetta is 150. So we're working on a shoestring with our public safety department. So money that's going to be needed, just keep it in mind.
I mean, all in all, next year, well, late next year, going in from 19 into 20, we have that little bit of bond roll-off buffer. But we won't the following year, probably. Unless our digest catches back up and just keeps rapidly growing.
So if we went with option C, we're only looking at generating $112,000 more.
That's the thing, our
mean-
millage rates don't really generate that much money. So we need,
That's one police officer.
So if you increase by $500,000, you go from 7.27 to 7.8 plus, you're looking at $250,000. In Monroe, the average person is going to feel that by
$40.
$3.50 a month.
But the publicized part of that is gonna be almost 10% increase.
Or it's going to be a $500,000.
Now, the publicized part is gonna say it's a 10% increase. That's what's gonna get publicized. That's what people are gonna discuss. They're not gonna discuss the $500,000, they're not gonna discuss $3 a month.
You don't get an
That's
asterisk.
the 10% increase.
Yeah, you don't say, hey, by the way, this is what you're getting for it.
I'm not arguing, I'm just telling you, that's the public discussion that's gonna take place. And
I don't know.
as long as everybody's willing to accept that, I'm all for it.
At a certain point, we don't have a choice.
some of the big things you're talking about, capital improvements and whatnot, yeah, those are usually what you would do in a bond rather than the M&O. The M&O's gotta take care of it. That's what we use to mow the grass at the parks and whatnot. In the future, if you did a bond, it depends what kind it is, it may have to be taken out of the M and O millage rate as well, if you don't do a GO. I don't know what other structure we do right now, but I'm just thinking since you mentioned it, that would have to be absorbed out of the M and O in the future. So think about that. You gotta take care of it, and you've gotta service that debt. So all that would be likely M and O unless it is a general obligation bond.
Anything else? Bound to have more questions.
Are we going to go ahead and fill the position of property maintenance and marshal this year?
Yeah, we are. I think we have to. We've punted that one about as long as we can. And I got pretty clear direction from everybody, earlier in the year. So I think we'll be doing that very shortly.
Yeah, that was part of the retreat.
Now, keep in mind, even if you advertise it, you don't have to vote for it later. So that's just the rules we play under now. So if we put it out there, on August 13th, you can always keep the same, roll back, whatever option it may be. We just have to advertise
But,
some amount.
but middle of August, we have to firm it up.
August
Beginning of August.
13th, at your council meeting.
So a month from now, I mean,
Yeah.
you can change in the next 30 days, but you can't change after that.
Right, so we've got to set it so the tax commissioner can bill it. We didn't even get the digest until, the very end of June?
Yeah, it was just a couple weeks ago.
Yeah. So everything's pretty rapid fire from the county.
What's the current effective transfer rate from the utility fund?
Believe we budgeted 6.5%.
6.5%. 6.5% from utility, 6% from solid waste.
Beg pardon?
6.5% from utility and 6% from solid waste. And the discussion was during the budget is we would look at it at mid-year. If it looked like it was trending higher than what we needed, we would roll it back, but it's right there. 49, 50% is not.
And the net effect of that is, $2.3 million total in the general fund and 288 out of solid waste. Right, yeah, so,
Based on some of our conversation earlier, could we, if we wanted to, I mean, I guess we can do anything, but would it be right for us if we wanted to raise that to 8%?
We could, I guess. There is a provision, and I'm not sure the 6% was in the charter, but then we made some changes. And the changes said that after the accumulated CIP funds got to a certain amount, with council vote, some of those funds could be transferred. So,
right. And that's where we were for the 2019 budget last year. We hit that 20% reserve threshold, and we used that additional to transfer to the general fund.
Do you know how much roughly that was?
How much?
Yeah.
That extra 1.5%.
Oh, I got you, okay.
There's an option you think about as opposed to raising taxes.
I'm just trying to.
So transferring that, would your preference be to use it for capital improvements? M&O, daily operations? Do we have to use it in a specific?
Talking about the transfer from the utility to the general fund?
Right.
It's just supplementing the overall general fund.
Yeah, it's just, you can use it.
Yeah, per the charter, it says it can be used for any purpose which is considered a permissible use of the city's own revenue under state law.
is the 6% still in the charter?
I'm sorry.
Is the 6% still in that wording?
5,
It just,
It is 5
It's
in the
5%.
charter.
minimum 5, so.
yeah, under the franchise, which is the regular 5%, it just says 5%. And then under the expansion fund, it says about over the 20%, you can do more than that for the CIP.
But we are transferring, what, 10%?
10% out of
CIP?
utilities into CIP every month.
And the reason
Into their CIP?
Yes.
the reason I asked that question is that would enable, I mean, if we could do something, if that theoretically was out there possible, if we went with something like option C here, and then we get into the budget a couple months from then, and really say we need an extra, $500,000, I'm just making up numbers. If we could move that 500 then and still fill in without going to 9 or 10% increase at this point. I don't know. It's just a thought. I'm not suggesting it. I'm just thinking out loud.
I think it can be done. I'm very hesitant to,
Well, I looked
Do
at you
that.
when I asked that question, obviously.
yeah. I just feel that, and that's been my philosophy all along, that I do think, in fairness, and from what I have seen in others, that probably 6% is a low transfer rate, and it could probably be raised. I hate to see us do what some other cities have done, just use their utility fund. And because my philosophy is that when we accumulate the proper reserves that we need in utilities, we ought to lower rates and not use it to supplement things that are general fund, things that other cities don't have utilities. And I mean, they're having to pay for this stuff, and they do it with taxes. And that's the proper accounting way to do it, in my opinion, even though some live off of their utilities, totally.
I think day-to-day operations should be paid for with taxes. But the day-to-day operations, capital improvements is the kind of thing that I could see having the utility fund provide. Frankly, if the utility fund comes in and puts in a park that attracts more people here, that's just more utilities to be used. So capital improvement, great, but not day-to-day operations.
We do a lot of that, I think that we don't, and what I'm saying is the utility fund does other supplements to the city.
But John, just to clarify that, I mean, cities that don't have utilities, like electric, they're getting franchise fees from Georgia Power, which they still pays the day-to-day operation. So they do have utility money pays for day-to-day operation. If it's a non-utility city, they do it through franchise fees.
Right.
So it's
I think that was
not
the
like you don't
premise.
do day-to-day operations.
Well, I think
That's
we
the
have the
premise
5%
on
for that.
the original charter 6% transfer
Yeah, you're still gonna do day-to-day
to
operations.
take that place.
City that doesn't offer.
Right, I'm saying over and above the 5% from the charter. I'm sorry.
Logan was 12, I'm sorry.
I said, yes, I understand the 5% as per the charter we use for day-to-day operations. I'm saying over and above, I think it should be specific project capital-based. Just my opinion. You're the bosses.
I think, as we get into the budget, of course, that could be hammered out a little bit more, what you're gonna use for utility transfers and whatnot, and what position we're in. I think we evaluated it every month. Obviously, Beth and I do, but especially year to year, we evaluate what we're doing and what fiscal position we're in both funds. But that can always be a added supplement later if things are really, really good on that side. Of course, we haven't raised utility rates in quite some time either, so we're doing it based off expansion, basically, new commercial, new industry, new residential, these are all new customers that's feeding into the utility fund, and that's feeding into the transfers, and we hope that keeps going, because, 5% of residential growth with 5% paid into utilities is gonna give you that much more money each year. So that's the direction we hope to head in without making any changes to our formulas.
But we're not, in the next fiscal year, we are not anticipating utility rates to rise. Is that correct?
I don't anticipate that at all.
Okay.
No,
Because I just don't think that would, I mean, if we knew that going in, that would not be fair.
no, I don't see that happening.
Okay.
I think the utility fund is in pretty good shape, and I think the rate structure is in good shape, even in light of some of the things, like we're participants in Plant Vogtle. And you see that Walton EMC has announced that there'll be a rate increase.
8%.
I don't think we'll have to do that.
Not anytime soon, based on the knowledge we have today. So that keeps our utility fund whole, keeps our transfers stable into the general fund. So that leads us back to the property tax. We're still relatively stable for 2019. Like I said, echoing Mr. Little, the bond millage is rolling off. We tuck that into the M&O, and we have a little bit of a gap to deal with certain things. Is it going to be enough to do everything we want to for 2020? Absolutely not. So I guess you just need to
Prioritize.
ask yourselves, how to prioritize and what can you live with here for the next year before we get into, further priorities such as parks and whatnot.
See,
Well, I'm not willing to go to an almost 10% increase, because that's the way it would be, appear to be, a 9.15. I'm not in favor of that.
All right.
Because I don't think it generates enough,
so you're looking at C probably.
D.
At C as a maximum to just at least start our ads with. Of course, like I said, you don't have to vote for it. This isn't a vote. This is just what we're gonna.
well, and I just think, we make that increase, but that's also going to hold us accountable to do
He ain't gonna give you no money for all.
do more with less, and all of our department heads will be held accountable to be very efficient in their budgets.
Yeah, I mean, we are, last year, we came in, 1/10,000% over budget in the general fund? And that's the reality. We're on the razor's edge of everything we do. So we're budgeting everything out, but that leaves us zero wiggle room for the unexpected each year. And we're not adding to reserves or anything like that, and we haven't for many years. It's just, we're just on that razor's edge.
How are we looking to fund the town green?
Currently through SPLOST, which is a slow go, right, because that's just trickles in each month. Might do some fundraising efforts, but that's still kind of a slow go. Your only big thing is, and that's a whole nother discussion for later on, is if you were to do a bond like you mentioned. That's how you knock it all out at once, rather than piecemealing it.
I feel like at some point we have to invest in the people of Monroe too. I mean, roads are good, sidewalks are good, but, talking about attracting industry, it's like Shane was talking about in his spiel, and this is definitely not verbatim, but, industry is looking for downtown centers that have that live, work, and play component. You look at Hammock Park and Activity Alley, and there's people in it all the time, which is driving, business to downtown, or at least an added amenity to the business downtown. And I really think we need to look at our entire park system, and try to figure out a way to invest in it, because it's in a, I won't say a sad state, that'd be a little exaggerated, that's exaggerating, but
But it could use major renovations and improvements.
$4.2 million renovation.
And to piggyback off of what Ross just said, when you bring people into downtown, obviously the net effect of that is, even if they don't live here, we're getting sales tax dollars from that, which we have seen increased over the last couple of years.
Yeah.
And to also to touch on what Lee said, We are keeping department heads accountable for their budget every month. I'm looking at those numbers. If they're over budget anywhere, I make them do a budget amendment within their department to make them accountable, so they're not just spending, thinking it's a free-for-all. The only area that we see that is inching towards more than where it needs to be for this time of year is insurance. And it's because of the claims that we're having. When you're self-insured, that's just something that comes along with it
Control.
when you have a lot of things that go on. So that's the only area that we see that may potentially get where it may fall over budget this year, right now.
So the process from here, correct me if I'm wrong, Beth, it's been a little while. We advertise a potential tax increase of, let's say, 4.85% and whatever millage rate that would be. There's 3 public hearings that go along with that. Have to be separated by 5 business days.
Yes.
So we'd have to figure out a calendar, but you have one on one day, I believe, after 6 PM. And then you can do another one a week later. You can do an AM meeting on the 13th, and then a 6 PM meeting, which would be the council meeting. You can do the next public hearing within that meeting and have all 3 public hearings there.
We have to advertise a week prior to each hearing, public hearing.
Yeah, and the 5-year history has to match a maximum of what you would set as well.
And it gives us specific wording of how the advertisement has to read. And Larry was right, it does have to say the actual increase,
Correct.
percentage.
Does staff have a recommendation?
Staff is just going to tell you that we have some major challenges in staffing for, for public safety, and we're accomplishing, some of the goals that you've set out before us. I'm happy that we have a little bit of gap funding with the bond millage rolling off, but it's not always gonna be there, so just keep that in mind. Option C, hey, it's something, it's better than nothing, for sure. The reality is that our tax digest just doesn't bring in a lot of tax money, That's why we have a pretty diversified general fund. Taxes only make up not even a big majority stake of it.
So you recommend we need to do F?
I'm not,
What would it sound like?
not gonna say.
You saying that, you basically saying C ain't bringing in nothing, so it it really don't serve no purpose to do it.
I understand the reality of public perception on this as well, so, do we need $400,000 to operate on? Yeah, but is it gonna be this year? Probably not. Probably not, because we are rolling off that GO bond. So we have some of that excess capacity.
And one thing to note is when we start seeing the growth hit the digest, and probably 2021 in reality, you'll also see utility increase as well. So that 5%, 6%, whatever we are at that point, 6.5%, is going to be an increase as well. So our digest will grow, our utility transfers will grow. So hopefully by 2021, 2022, we'll see the net effect of all the growth that's starting to happen now. It's going to be hard getting there.
I would imagine the Monroe Pavilion will have a pretty big impact should that go through and be developed
Let me-
for completion.
Quick question, how long you think gonna be for that, hookup to Loganville will be?
I hope we get it to construction bid later this year. So that'd be about a 9 to 12 month build process.
So by 2021.
2021, yeah.
Not to mention the development on Lee Rowell. should be
Yeah,
coming
so
online.
we have all this stuff that's just ready,
Just in a-
ready to get there, and we're not there. So what, this figure here, looking at $429,000 on some maximum option. Well, that may happen in a year or two, right? We may get there. We're just saying, under the environment we're working in now for next year, how do we kind of ensure that we're not on the razor's edge all the time? And, you can't afford to have strange things happen, bad health insurance claims or whatever it may be, workers' comp claims.
But it sounds like to me that you saying we need F.
I would need option Z.
Well, I believe that too.
I mean, to do everything that everybody wants to do now, yeah, you would need a lot of money. I don't know that we're gonna get to do everything now. I mean, projects take a lot of time and a lot of planning.
I'm going to suggest, and I know we're not voting, but that we try to get that collection versus prior year right at 200. And, which I'm guessing it's gonna be somewhere around the
Those C and 3/4.
8.8%.
Well, it's a little bit less than D and it's more than C, but I concur with Mr. Bradley on that, and I'll tell you why. It goes back to what I said initially. We have a responsibility to act in a fiscally responsible way. That cuts two ways. That doesn't mean that every time we vote on something, we just automatically roll something back because that's politically popular. I'd be saying something different if we had a national economy that was struggling. I hadn't checked it today, but the last time I looked, stock market is over 27,000 on the Dow Jones.
It's up today.
We've got a national economy that's roaring. We've got a local economy that's doing very well. And I think we would do our community a disservice if we get so concerned about what someone might say about the percentage or something. I just agree with Larry. I think that the 200.
I don't know what he's saying.
Well, what he's
No, they
saying
just
is
talking to each other, so don't none of them know
we
what he's
need
saying.
we need to structure this in such a way that we could hit 200,000 in that orange rather than, 237. And I think that puts us in a position where we're secure. We're not walking that razor's edge every single second. Because, yeah, people do sometimes complain about the percentages, but I don't think there's going to be some major outrage over something like this. What people expect is their elected officials to act responsibly, to give them rational reasons for what we do, and not just be doing something willy-nilly because, it's politically popular or whatever. And people expect services. You can't get the services if you don't have the revenue. So
We need to be in a position that if we promise those additional services, that we're going to deliver.
absolutely.
And I'm serious about that. That, we can't just hold back again and another 6 months pass and then the public sees nothing in the efforts we've made to increase the taxes in order to do this. So that's my point.
It's not gonna be a whole lot you can do with $200,000. No, you're not talking about hiring no officers with that. You're gonna have to go up to F. Even if you're trying to hire an officer, you had to go up to F.
I just think it's not fiscally responsible to go up that much at this point.
No, I don't either.
But I think 200.
If we go up, if we use option C, we are behind. This money is to fund the 2019 budget.
We won't get the money until the end of the year. Right.
But it will match,
It'll match the budget,
It's
and then
used
we-
to
yeah,
to
and we
fund the
cash flow into
2019
2020.
budget. We're a whole year behind. It'd be
Yeah.
great if we had the reserves. In the years past, we've had to borrow from the utility fund to pay the bills till the end of the year, till the collections start. But the point is, it's to fund the 2019 budget.
It is, and it.
So therefore, if you went with option C, theoretically, there should be $87,000 addition that would be allowed as an addition to the 2019 budget. Or more, 112, to the 19 budget. Before you set and determine revenue and the budget for 2020. Is that right?
That's basically how that would work, yeah.
Okay.
And that's assuming when we get into 2020 budgets that, you know, everything's going to kind of stay the same as we've seen it here.
So as we talk about additional funding things, are the people that's talking about those, talking about instituting them now in 2019 or in the 2020 budget?
Lee's talking about things we already passed in the 19 budget that haven't been implemented yet.
Right.
So, yeah, to that effect.
But theoretically, it would be covered.
And adding some street patrol.
Yeah, so
Covered and we'd had that.
a couple of things we talked about were the marshal position, property maintenance position. We have not hired those yet. And then we were going to do a mid-year review of the 2 police officers. Well, our mid-year review is tight. Beth just said, 51-49. That doesn't give us the space for the 2 police officers.
And this wouldn't either, but.
It would inch you there, yeah, for sure. It would get you 1, and it would give you a little bit of cushion for the other positions which we've already put in the budget to hire for this year. That's about all it would do, but it would fulfill those obligations anyway.
To get us at the $200,000 that Larry and David mentioned, it would be at a 7.712 mil, which is a 7.89% increase.
So you're talking about 7.819, you said?
8.9.
And it's, that's more palatable than 9.15? I don't really see that there's really that
Don't
much.
make no sense. Them numbers about the same.
It's just, have
Well, how,
have a
look,
lot we need.
how about we do this? We advertise for somewhere in between that C and D, but you guys obviously get the final say come August 13th.
If we were to advertise EF, or like you said, Z, could we drop it down in the meeting to?
You can improve
one of
it.
those
Anything
levels?
below that, you just can't go over that.
Well,
Go with option D and call it, and then we'll continue to discuss it.
yeah, then we could drop it a little bit.
So you advertise option D, that's your high mark, and
Try
then
to fall around that.
you could go anything down, you could go to 0 if you wanted to.
Everything's free.
Yeah, and the whole purpose of this is put it out there, let the citizens see it, and let's see if folks fill the room up saying, oh my God, what are you doing? Or
Tell you,
folks just.
no one complained on the,
How many
no one went to a meeting on the
since we
county's tax
raised
increase
taxes
last
in the
year.
city of Monroe?
0.
I don't remember raising them since I've been here. Maybe once.
2016 had an increase, but before that, I think it rolled back like the previous, I don't know how many years, I don't have that.
6 out of the last 7
Yeah.
went back down.
And before that, it was probably a good 10 years of rollback.
Yeah. I have that written down. I don't know that that's,
The one
I
time,
don't think it was 16. I think it was like 13 or 14.
because there was a
It
rollback
wasn't
the last
16, 'cause
7
I
of the
don't
last
know.
8.
We ain't had no, we rolled back here since I've been on the council.
Actually,
We ain't got no.
gave you more. I mean,
First year I
rollback
was
rate.
on the council,
All right.
4-4 vote, voted by the mayor to not roll back. And that was, since then, we've done rollback.
That's probably when the last time they rolled it back to.
That was, it's rolled
didn't roll back every year.
back every year since, yeah.
So are there any questions? You want to go with a D as the advertised rate?
That's just the informal direction I need, and, just to get us in legal compliance with all the ads that we have to do, and, we're on a short timeline here, so I appreciate y'all coming in and discussing it and letting us show you the digest.
You know,
Any additional questions or comments before we adjourn?
Well, I'd just like, as this is being advertised, if you could send us an email and just outline the things that this is going to accomplish. So that, I'm on the same page with you when
Yeah,
it
sure.
comes back. And all of the rest of us too.
Okay.
All right, if there's no further discussion, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
I have a motion by Mr. Bradley, second by Ms. Malcolm. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, like sign. Motion carries, meeting adjourned.